This is a question we get a lot. Um, why do you actually do this? And especially companies in New York City. I mean, they're selling Tupperware. Something's got to be going on, right? You're going to have to sell something or not. So why are you doing this, and what's in it for Next Jump? And what I realized over time was people wanted to know, especially, what's the personal agenda of all this for Megan and I? Because as CEOs, we can choose to do it or not do it. We can change the rules, make less academies and whatnot. So I want to help you understand kind of the personal agendas of both Megan and I of why we do what we do here, especially the 3 days, academies, and all the companies we work with. So I may have mentioned this in the beginning. We have two goals in the company, a better me goal and a better you goal. A lot of people have said you guys should write a book and all this stuff, and Harvard wrote part of one already. But when people write books, it's like trying to build a megaphone to tell the world something. And we found there's a greater way to speak to the world: success. Everyone listens to success. And when you succeed at the highest of levels, our goal on the Better Me side is to build a 50 billion annual revenue company. And that is something we're pushing very hard on, because we believe that is the megaphone that will help us do our more audacious goal. And we'll take you through the details of, we figured out in our own way how to make the world better. And that had to do with changing how companies run. And we've been trying to do this for a while and been laughed at and told this is silly, can't be done. All the skepticism you even had in here. I mean, it's a lot easier now. Can you imagine going over 10 years back? I mean, they thought we were just a joke. And the notion that the timing of the century changing and what that's doing is so opportune as things are happening. So let me kind of walk you through some of this. There was an article a few months back, early in the year, in the New York Times. If you saw the movie Inside Out, it's a children's movie about emotions. And it was an article talking about the experts, the scientists that were interviewed on the emotions to advise the movie producers. So they talked about what each emotion meant. And when I read it, there was something that really resonated for me, and it was around the emotion of anger. Now, anger can be a very negative emotion, but they're talking about the positive attributes of anger. That anger tied to injustice and the desire for us to correct injustice fuels us to act. When we lack the courage, where it's easier to do nothing, it's easier to just look away, don't stand out, right? The whole white blood cells doing nothing. It's easier to do nothing. But the emotion of anger is what will get you past your fears, will build the courage. Mitchell talks about this. When you're up there dancing in our dance class, when you get nerves, the way to get through your nerves is think of anger. And when you think of anger and injustice done to you, to other people, it brings a level of action and drive where even someone like me, that I'm horrible at dance, they figure it out somehow. You move your feet and you action. So that was something that was very interesting to me. It hit and resonated for me. You may have seen this on our walls. We'll give you t-shirts that have this in the back. To do the little things that allow others to do the great things they're meant to do. It's something we put, but it was kind of a mouthful. To be honest, a lot of people struggled remembering. It was like a poem. You couldn't quite get the words right. So we created an implementation version of it, a shorter version. Something is little only if your cup is getting full. If you give money away, it's little to give away if you have more money. Whether it's technology, knowledge, IP, scarcity makes us hoard things. When you keep filling your cup, and why everything starts with Better Me is because then it's little for you to give away. For the purpose of finding others, but be discerning, the right others. And that's the better you. And us, people always think is Next Jump. No, that's the world. And this is the formula we put together, and it was a lot easier for everyone to remember. Every initiative in our company is a Better Me or a Better You initiative. We make all our investments in one of those two directions. And in fact, a lot of people confuse this formula. I think it was Bishop who just sent a note saying better you plus better me equals better us. We're so trained in the quid pro quo, right? You know, the whole like, you know, I'll buy you dinner if you buy me dinner, sort of like the you, then me, versus we have to be selfish first. The oxygen mask on ourselves, because that's how you can do more. We tend to do the opposite. Give the shirt off my back, I'm getting sick, my cup is empty, and you forget about caring for yourself, caring for your team. I love what Josh Hurd had said, right? Self-care was at the bottom. It should have been in the top. It's the first thing we have to do if you want to do more good. Now, I want to give you a sense of kind of where this comes from me. This is a picture of my father. My father is the most famous corn scientist in the world. Sort of an odd one. He's actually in the Encyclopedia Britannica as the father of corn. So I am technically the oldest firstborn son of corn, right? It's kind of an odd name, but he's been nominated for the Nobel. What was that? First colonel. All right. Colonel isn't good though, right? Isn't general better, or chief? But all right, first colonel. They're all good. They're all good. They're all good. But we know that's not true. Right? So my father's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 5 times. And so his life mission has been to end world hunger. And this is what he's worked on his whole life. And being the oldest son, I've watched him get so close, but unable to win the Nobel Prize. And he always told me the reason he wanted the Nobel Prize is that it would be a megaphone. My research and the discoveries I made, world hunger could be ended. It could end world hunger if I could magnify what I've discovered. And that's the reason he wanted it. But I watched my dad struggle with this his whole life. In fact, me and my dad were carbon copies. We both talked too fast. We both had stutters. I say had because he still does. He can't present his work at all. And so if you have a father who's a scientist or a parent who's a scientist, they produce white papers like crazy. And my 2 siblings, the 3 of us, were all in boarding school, financial aid, and I would come back home. We grew up in Nigeria and West Africa. So I'd come home for my Christmas break, and I remember this vividly. And it was December 24th, I was 14 years old, and he gives me 800 pages saying, I've been waiting for you to come home so you can correct my white papers, my research papers. And these are like very painful scientific things and grammatical errors. And so I remember being in his office, December 24th at 5 a.m., reading through 800 pages. And there's an article on the desk. So I pick it up and read it. And it talks about how Dr. Kim is one of the greatest scientists the world's ever seen. But by the end, it says he'll never succeed because he can't present his work. And, I'm exactly like him. It was my worst subject, writing, reading, and I tried my best, but I watched people try to take advantage of that. The number of people who came up and said, I will edit your Nobel application and you will win with my help, but I want half the credit for your 30 years of research. And his ethics always said no. And he had people try to pay him money to go into ethanol research because corn and ethanol is big for renewable energy. And he always said no, saying, like, rich need electricity, the poor need to eat. And he stuck to this. And I watched people who literally had more money, billionaires, millionaires, huge companies, they would not help him. Now, he had his faults. He couldn't present it. And, it's painful enough to read, but I watched this and it was so painful because I tried to help, but it was just something I took as like, that's just the way it lands. Fast forward, 10 years go by, I built NextJump. And through keeping NextJump alive, we ended up raising $45 million, but unusually from 100 individuals. They call them angel investors. And one day I walk into our office, I'm 24, and my stutter disappeared. The 10,000 hours thing, I wasn't even trying. I just was pitching the business nonstop to keep the company alive. And my stutter disappears. And I have this like moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm not meant to build a tech company. I'm like the yin and yang of my dad. I need to go help him end world hunger. So I try to leave the company. I put CEOs in charge of the company twice. Before you know it, 9/11 occurs. We go from 150 employees down to 4. My own baby was dying. I had 6 eviction notices at one point, and there was a window of 60 days where I had a bloody nose every single day. And stress shows up in different ways. And I used to walk around with 2 tissues stuffed up my nose and just didn't understand why I was bleeding all the time. And fought through it and just, couldn't think of leaving NextJump. 10 more years goes by. So I turned 46 this year. But when I turned 34, something profound happened for me. Because until that point, we built the company. And like most companies, right, it was all about making my fiefdom stronger, keep your IP inside. Like the competitive advantage is we get better people and we know how to develop people better. Why would you ever share that, right? You keep it all to yourself. And that's what we were doing too, right? We wanted to be the best place to work and didn't want anyone to be as good as us. And that time when I was 34, I get a phone call. My dad has a stroke. So he's still alive, but something changed. He had a stroke and his energy levels changed. Everything dropped. And what was supposed to be a Nobel Prize that would be a megaphone felt like it would be a trophy on our mantle if you want it. It's just not the same. And that same month, I met this billionaire. And it's amazing how sometimes you meet someone and what they say just lands on you at a different way at a specific time. And he said, Charlie, I only buy art from living artists. I believe in putting fuel behind those who can do something with it. And that month, the Nobel Prize did not feel like it would do much for my dad. It was too late. And all the littlest things for other people, they just wouldn't help. And this is what I used to have on my wall, where I would want to build a company to help my dad's work and world hunger. And then it switched. It switched to identify and empower individuals. I wanted to find people like my dad and kind of correct what was wrong. I didn't want to do what others did to my dad. And so I shortened it. And then in 2011, I met a guy named Simon Sinek, became good friends. And I explained what I was doing. And he said, Charlie, I think what you're saying is you want to do the little things that allow others so the great things are meant to do. Giving as you go, there was a quote I liked that said, you can do more good if you're profitable and make more profit because you're good. My dad has spent his whole life trying to do good, but he did it on an empty cup. Then I've spent time, we're in the for-profit industry, watching the biggest of companies, trying to just keep filling their cup. And when it's full, they upgrade the size of the cup and there's no end, because now you're competing against the next $1 trillion company, the next $1 billion company. And these were connected. They were connected and sequence mattered. And I think for me personally, Meghan entering my life at the time she did, when I almost bankrupted this company, I was going to say 8 times, but dozens of times, she helped me figure out that giving irresponsibly is just not the right thing to do. And I had board members try to fire me twice for some of the giving work we did. And this is something that took me a while to learn. But the thing that I have definitely learned was this. My megaphone, our better me, is to build one of the biggest companies in the world. And then when people say, how'd you do it? You get to point to how to run a company better. Now, I'll end with this before I turn over to Meghan. This is a picture of my dad 2 years ago. There was a scandal in Korea. The South Korean president got impeached, and the country had like an emergency election. My dad chose to run for president. I was like, Dad, this is not the best thing to do, but he wanted change. And he wanted to run for president. And I won't tell you the full story because I was sending him funds. It's not easy. And this is him in the newspaper protesting alone. No team, just alone. And I've just watched him lose his health. I've watched him lose all his money. And I know, like, someone said something so profound to me. My mom's a pastor of a church, and someone said to me one day, God, like, people who do good things, God helps. And what God looked at was, your dad's done a lot of good stuff, but he can't do much with it. And so he looked at the next best thing, and any blessings that are happening is because of your dad's good work. And so he saw you and said, you know what? You have the energy, you have the potential. So that's where I got some of the fortune we got. But I think the best thing I got was Meghan help run the company. So.
what am I supposed to say now? Oh my gosh. I feel like everything I have, I owe to Charlie. So that's, sorry, I'm like starting crying. I'm very tired on top of all of it. And it's very emotional. I can't wait to have a drink after this. I cannot even tell you. Thank you. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to experiment sharing my story today, which my husband last night was like, why don't you just stick to the same thing? And I was like, because I feel like it's not quite right. So I'm going to experiment a little bit on top of all of this. But I just wanted to share what Charlie was talking about. We were talking about this late last night after some of the last people left. We have to come up with our journey talk. And talking through some of this with Charlie, I said to him, I think it was like 2012. I remember we were like walking to get lunch somewhere around here. And I remember it's like so vividly, in kind of a naive way. I remember asking him, he was talking about his dad and how he felt like so many people wouldn't help his dad. And I never, I don't understand. That's not how I was raised. I'll share with you my story, very different upbringing. I remember asking him, like, I don't understand how we're going to correct this wrong, that people should do good and help the people who are doing good, others should help them. And I remember him saying something to the effect of, Meghan, I'm going to change. He was so frustrated. And I remember he was so angry and he said, I'm going to change the game. What do you mean you're going to change the game? And he said, I'm going to change how companies are run. I'm going to get on the inside. I'm going to get into the Fortune 1000. That's where all the money is. They could be doing good. They should be taking care of their people and doing good. That's the right thing. They should take care of their people and do good at the same time. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to find a way in. I'm going to become so successful. I'm going to get in their tent and I'm going to show them this is the only way to run. I'm going to show it to them first through my own organization. I'm going to build a huge organization. And in the process, I'm going to show them they can't do it on any other way. I mean, he said this much more eloquently, I'm sure. And I remember thinking, I just can't even comprehend that. And I said to him something like, that's going to take a long time, like what, we're running an e-commerce business. We didn't even have our leadership academy at the time. And I really didn't get it. I mean, I really didn't. I remember really struggling. I don't understand how we're going to do this. And it's crazy to me because last night we were having this conversation and we got emotional because I'm like, I feel like we're doing it. But, and it all comes like from the pain that he's faced with his family, with his dad, and there's been so much sacrifice. And anyways, it is like a crazy, awesome story that I feel like we're doing it. We're in the process of doing it. And I'm 2012, I was like, this is gonna take forever. I don't really understand it and how we're gonna go about this. And it's like pretty incredible that we're on this journey. Let me think. So I was going to share with you my story. I have a few parts in here. I'm a twin. If on the left side is my twin sister, Erin. I'm on the right, my mom and dad. I'll do this part really quick because I wanted to share more of my journey. I'm going to practice a little bit, something new. But I grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, very blue collar. My dad worked for Verizon, which eventually was Verizon, for 37 years, climbing telephone poles, as blue collar as you can be. If you didn't work 100 hours in the week, you didn't work. So very strong work ethic. In my family, my mom sacrificed her career to be a stay-at-home mom. She was brilliant. She passed up getting into the best dental program in the country, and just didn't have the support of her family. And she sacrificed a lot. Is the bottom line for me to be here, my sister and I to be able to do what we do. But my twin sister. So long and short of it is, I usually go into this whole story about this, but I grew up being. I eventually got to accept as the dumb twin. I just wasn't as smart as my sister. And when you're, talk about staying in your own lane. When you're an identical twin, I don't know if anybody here is an identical twin, but you share the same DNA. So when you're in third grade and your sister's getting moved out to be in the advanced math class and you're not, it's hard, right? Because why is she smarter? And then she got into Villanova and I didn't. And I went through a rough window, kind of getting me to the process where I got to next jump. But yeah, I just grew up with a lot of struggle. I struggled in school. You'll see, I'll talk about my son, Brendan, is struggling in school. It's really hard for me to kind of watch this happen. But I'll explain to you in my journey. This is my family now. Sorry, it's a little dark. My husband, Mark, the one wearing the Yankee jersey, even though I'm from Boston, but we said if we had boys, they would be Yankee fans. If they were girls, they would be Red Sox fans, and I lost twice. I'm still a Red Sox fan. I can't do it. But my son, Brendan, is wearing the Yankee jersey. And then my son, Matthew's all the way to your right. Matthew's 9, and Brendan is 7. Okay, so let me give you my journey. Let me take a stab at this. So 1998, I started here as a local sales intern. I was an intern back in the day when the business was in print. There was no such thing as e-commerce back then, so it makes me feel old. But I did like the local sales door to door. We had a print guidebook that was distributed in colleges and corporations, eventually went online, and that's what is now Perks at Work. But back then it was a print business. We crashed down to 4 people. I think you've heard the story, .com crash. We had 150 people, went down to 4. I was one of those 4, and I really think it's just because I worked hard, and so Charlie kept me on board in that 4. And oh my God, now this journey from 2002, building back up. 2004, I get promoted to run our merchant sales team. Yes, it was a very small team, right? It was a small team, but I remember him handing me the binder and me thinking, I can't believe he thinks I know what I'm doing. And he was like, I'm going to give you the chance. And I remember the process, and I was so excited. I was being promoted. I had a team of probably half a dozen people. The business started doing really well. I started learning how to do sales. I started selling $1 million contracts. I loved it. But in 2000, yeah, so somewhere in this window, I wrote Scary Charlie came out. So I don't think, you see some of the critical feedback we get. It is not critical relative to some of the stuff I experienced. I'm sure some of you experienced difficult leaders and whatnot, but Charlie's baby Next Jump was dying and we were struggling. And this, one of our investors, his experience was more in the fear mandated leadership. You use fear as the tactic to get people motivated. Well, Charlie learned how to do that really well. I was terrified of Charlie, terrified. Sorry, I love you to death, but I was terrified of you. In this whole window, I think it was around 2007, 8, where, in this whole window, I was LHFing everywhere. So this whole term LHFing, I felt like an imposter. You've heard the imposter syndrome. I really feel like I defined what an imposter was, which is if anybody ever knew what was really going on in my head, they would say, you shouldn't be in charge. Like, I felt like, I don't know what I'm doing here, why they think I can do this. I was constantly in my head until around 2008. I started to get out of my head, but a big part of, and I became head of revenue, but a big part of what got me out of my head is a fun story. This is crazy. So Charlie wanted to promote me to run our revenue. We had at that point like 200 people, and I was like in my late 20s, almost 30, I guess. And, 30 in 31 in 2008. So it was right before I turned 31, and he wanted me to run the whole business. And we were, at the time, it was more of an advertising contract, what we did, and we were making a lot of money, but we started hiring all these really senior people. And he said, I want you to manage all of them. We were hiring people from the best of the best organizations to come and join us. And I said, Charlie, I can't do it. I said, I will work my butt off for them, hire them. I'll work for them. I'll kill it for them. I can't do this. I'm done. It's not possible. I'm exhausted. And I feel like I just can't do the job. So he said, okay, help me interview these people. So he brought in 3 people, like super seasoned people, like 20 years experience on me, and had them come and interview with me and him. So these 3 individuals come in, I interview them, I send them down to Charlie's office. So after this whole process, Charlie calls me to his office and is like, I want to tell you what I just did. So after you interviewed them, Meghan, I brought them to my office and I asked them, tell me about Meghan. So his interview questions to these 3 individuals, tell me about Meghan. Tell me about, and talk about truth, right? This is like, he shared with me what they said. And I'll never forget it. One of them said, well, she seems frazzled. She seems like she's got a lot going on, and she seems just frazzled and kind of all over the place. I'm sure there was more to the story than this, but this is where I was so pissed off. My visceral response, and this is like inferior Meghan, imposter syndrome. I flipped out. I was like, of course I'm overwhelmed and scatterbrained, and I'm making all the money for this company. And if it wasn't for me, nobody would be getting paid. And he's interrupting my day. And I was like this beast came out of me. I was so angry. Like, who is this person to come off the street? He doesn't know the job I have and what I have to get done, the responsibility I have, how hard I've worked to get to this position. I lost it. I had this 30-minute tantrum, which I do pretty often now. It's just, once you do one, you're like, oh, it feels really good. So I had this major tantrum in his office, and I'll never forget it. After this tantrum, it was like, when you're done, and he went, is that what it took? Seriously, is that what it took? Hired all of them to report into me. And this is before the no fire policy. I had the pleasure of firing all of them, which I know is a very awful thing to do. It was wonderful when I realized they were the most inferior imposter, pretending to know what they were doing and had no clue. And within like, I don't even, some of them like almost lasted a year, but it was like, sorry, it was, I haven't processed this fully. I'm processing this in front of you, but it felt good. When I think back to that, that felt good. They thought they could do my job better. So I think about the tactics he had to use to get me out of my head. And I remember, so many conversations where I'd be thinking, I don't understand why Charlie thinks I can do this. And that's why I always talk about, the scale we have is expectations. We talk about expectations a lot, always high expectations. And I would think, well, I don't understand why you think I can do it. And his response would always be so easy, which is, I don't understand why you think you can't. Like, and I would say, well, like, why me? Right? Kind of like what Josh Hurt asked you, like, why me? And he would always say, why not you, Meghan? Like, I feel like I never really had that level of expectation set for me. I think, just in my life, I didn't surround myself, I guess, with that kind of, maybe I feel like maybe I made it hard to give me feedback because I seemed fragile. But Charlie didn't take fragility. It was, why not you always? So I think about expectations and people have a hard time with the language we use. I'm like, yeah, but we're a product of our expectations. We're a product of the environment, of the people and the expectations they have for us. I have high expectations for myself, but if others don't have that of me, it's really hard to maintain that level of high expectation. So that was a huge learning. I tried to opt out and he wouldn't let me opt out. And he tried all these crazy ways to get me out of my head. I then became a chief of staff, which in the business world means nothing. They thought I was Charlie's assistant. And I eventually became our co-CEO in 2016. But in the process, I had two children, Matthew, again in 2009, and then Brendan I had in 2012. But in 2009, I had a profound experience with, Matthew was born 2 months early. He was born without his left ear. He has facial nerve damage. He's got some challenges, and I had a really hard time with it. And I left for maternity leave and I ended up staying out of the company for about 6 months. I had a really hard time like leaving him, but I really struggled and I wanted to come back because I missed the stress. I missed the growth that I was getting despite how stressed out I was. I realized stress is good. It's what keeps you alive. And I was missing it. But I wanted to come back, but I need to figure out how am I going to make this work? I have a newborn, I have some challenges, and how am I going to do that? So Charlie called a favor from Jim Lear, who you may have heard of before. He's one of the top performance coaches out there. He's, getting much older now. He's 18 bestseller books out there, and he runs a performance institute, HBI, down in Florida. And Jim Jim, a big following of Next Jump, called us a demonstration project. We do the things that he talks about. And so really, was a big fan of Next Jump, and Charlie had asked him, can you do me a favor? And actually Tom Fuller, who runs engineering, he's in Boston right now. Charlie asked him a favor, can you help coach Meghan and Tom? We went down both separately to just help us. And he never does one-on-one. Huge favor for Charlie. Took each one of us one-on-one for a day, which was a really big deal. And the profound discussion that we had with that kind of was a big turning point for me was he asked me, kind of like what Josh was talking about, your obituary, but he asked me, what do you want it to say on your tombstone? And I remember thinking, God, I honestly had never thought of it, right? And just very viscerally, I said, I wanted to say she was a great mother, she was a great wife, and she was a great leader. And, he scratched his head and he's like, oh, yeah, I like it. That's good. But how about great wife and great mom, but not great leader? And I said, well, no, like, I feel like I need all of it. Like, I want all of that. Well, how about a great, leader and a great wife, but not such a great mom? What do you think of that? And like, he just was trying to challenge me in every way possible. And I was like, I'm not going to, that's what I want. Like, that's the goal I have. That's how I want to live my life. And he said, this is going to be really hard. He's like, there's not many people in the world who have figured that out. And I was like, well, that's kind of what I want. I don't know how to even do that. And he said, well, Next Jump is the best place to help figure that out. He's like, if there's anybody in the world that's going to help you figure that out, it's going to be Charlie. And, I came back and I was like, Charlie, you got to help me figure this out. And we came up with some of the most creative programs to figure out how to do all of that. And, was a program called Bath Time we created. I mean, this was in 2009, which was, what's going to tip me over is if I never get home for bath night for my kid, I'm going to work hard, but I need to get home for bath time once in a while. So we instituted all these programs where Monday night would be the late night unconstrained. I'd be here as late as I needed to be. I'd have a workout. My team would know I'm here. all these really strategic ways to get as much as I could out of Monday. But by Tuesday at 7 o'clock, even if this place was on fire, I mean, maybe if it was really on fire, but for the most part, by 7 o'clock, I was gone to give my son a bath. And so we found ways, and there's a lot more to that, but if you want more details, I can share it later. But we started building all these programs that would help us figure out how to do it, and where you're giving to the company, but you're also giving to your family. And because it's so much mental work, it's not physical labor. I mean, the majority of our work is not physical labor anymore. And so that's going to cripple me if I never get home to my kid, or if I'm, so all these programs we built. Then I had Brendan, and this is crazy. It was in 2012, and I live right next door to this office so that I don't have to commute. And, so maximize time with my kids. And I was taking a walk with my newborn Brendan, and I asked Charlie, come out, give him an update how things are going in the company, give update on the baby, find out what's happening in the company. And I remember I was walking around this corner. It was like walk was almost done. He had to go back to work. I had to, take the kid upstairs. And I said, I remember I was looking down, like, oh God, how do I say this? It's like, I want to work part-time, I want to work part-time. And he was, oh, okay, well, and in his head, he's like, so what do you mean? Like Mondays and Wednesdays, you're going to come in from 9 to 12. And I was like, no, I just need maybe a half day on Friday where I can get home and see my kids. And he was, no problem, but he thought part-time meant I was never going to be here. And I was like, I know. But he was like, if you want more flexibility, more time, it was like, we're going to have to get more leaders. We're going to have to find more leaders. At the time, we were doing everything in the business, running the business and running all of culture. So when you hear about the culture initiatives we own, for you additional duties or collateral duties you have to do, just running the ship, we did all of that. So at 8 o'clock at night, when everybody was gone, we would go back to our office and come up with, what are we going to do for the, Halloween? We're going to plan the Halloween party. Now we're going to plan. And we were the social coordinators. I was at the place where I'm like, I can't do that. I have 2 children. I'm running the business. I can't be social coordinator. I can't take care of their fitness. I can't. Oh my God. It was so much. So we created this flow model, which maybe we haven't showed you diagrams of that, but this is where the idea of a coach, captains, and right and left hands comes from, where we said, we are going to own nothing. We will be the coaches for everything. We are going to have to train other leaders to do everything, because if we own everything, I'm not going to be able to do it. So it took some time, obviously. It's not an overnight thing, but we started creating, especially in culture, we built this flow model across every culture initiative. So for the academy, we have coaches of the academy, Daryl and Laura, captains, they've got right hands and left hands. You're constantly, flow stands for follower, leader, organization, meaning you're getting followers to turn into leaders. And that started because the constraint I had with having Brendan. And then in 2016, I became the co-CEO, which was really an honor for me. And the Harvard book came out in 2016 as well, which was, kind of a big deal. And if I did this really quickly before I came down here, this probably should crash all the way down to here. The biggest challenge now that I have is actually with Brendan. And I really had 1 year, I think, to enjoy the co-CEO, the Harvard book, adult development, DDO, all this exciting stuff, peak of my career, and a really great year. And then in 2017 is kind of where the challenge I've had with Brendan. So he's struggling in school. This is my my crucible, if you will. I really feel like I'm in it. I'm as in it as you could possibly be. He is probably one of the most stubborn children, and he's a happy kid, but he's the master LHFer. I can't believe he figured out the skills how to do this at 7 years old. But it started when he was 5. So in 2017 is when the school we're at, basically we're just trying to tell us he can't do it. He can't do it. You hear and I don't know if any of you have children who struggle in school, developmental issues, just hearing all the things they say. And talk about truth. It's and I'm getting a lot of it, which on one hand is good. On the other hand, it can be very painful to hear the struggle constantly. And especially with my insecurity of just being not as smart as my sister. Oh God, it's painful. My son Matthew, I think maybe I feel like God gave him a lot of extra stuff because they took away something, they gave him more. Things are just much easier for him. He tries anything and he gets pretty good at it. But with Brendan, it's just a fucking struggle. Everything, all the language development, just all of it. It's just really hard. And school is just very hard for him. He repeated kindergarten, which I know people do. It's just hard. And he was so thrilled to get to first grade this year. He's in the new building with the big kids. So confident, so excited. And of course, my husband and I are just bracing for impact. And we just met with the head of the school on Tuesday. I'm just saying school is really hard for Brendan. He's just really struggling. And all the programs we've built at Next Jump to help the kids, I cannot tell you how selfish I feel. But when I think of the oxygen mask, I need it. I can't work. I can't use my brain if I'm worried about my kid, and I'm worried about him. And everybody would say, well, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. I don't know. I'm sure he will be. I'm a good mom. But I'm afraid to admit that I have like wavering faith, right? Because he's got some momentum in reading. He's starting to like it, but everything is a struggle. So my faith wavers a lot. And I feel shame in that. And I was telling Charlie last night, like, he never gave up on me. And I kind of need like that faith, like that Stockdale paradox, where I need reminders that I struggled a lot and look where I got. And there's all different kinds of people, but I really need the help of Next Jump and all the programs that we've built. We really hope to bring this to other organizations. It's not daycare. We have, Coach Mackey's helping do basketball training and just making him tough because he's physically tough as nails, but we're hoping it translates mentally. In Boston, the tough STEM Tech team, Reva and Madhu, were here observing. They helped us all summer build a coding program that will help Brendan. It's like an SEL coding program where you can learn coding with like these blocks and build robots, and there's social emotional work in that, so you can train more grit and more fight. And they're helping us do that. I mean, we have some of the best helping. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, because I think every parent has at some point will have a child who has a struggle, and nobody really talks about it, which just makes you feel more inferior. And I'm really hoping we can, bring this to other organizations. We've actually talked to Bob Burke about this. I've mentioned this, that like in the Navy, I don't know all the different family programs, but I just think that helping, especially the mothers who might be at home just stressing about this, I cannot tell, and the dads who are at work, or the vice versa, it's so crippling. Like I can't think of, and then forget aging parents is a whole other piece. Your health is a whole other piece. If you have something wrong physically, mentally, emotionally, it all matters. So I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I forget what I'm saying. It's all good. That's my story. Yeah, I think this is why I give it all at work, because work takes care of me. And that's what I need to perform. So thank you so much. I can't wait to have a drink with you in Boston. I wish I could have a drink with you. I think Charlie wanted to wrap up with a few other thoughts.
There's a guy who passed away a couple of years ago named Bill Campbell. There's a new book written about this guy. It was called The $1 Trillion Coach. So, we got to meet a lot of very cool people. We spent time with Bill Campbell. So he was a Columbia football coach that ended up being a horrible football coach, but ended up being one of the best coaches in the world. He was the coach for Steve Jobs for Apple. He coached the Google founders. He coached Mark Zuckerberg. The who's who of people in tech sought out coaching from him. And this was something someone said recently, just that they were struck by how brilliantly Bill Campbell anticipated the evidence. He was living theories in the 1980s that experts didn't even develop, let alone validate, until decades later. It became obvious to me that almost everything great in the company happened in teams. That was my pitch in the talk. Start treating teams, not individuals, as the fundamental building block of an organization. The notion that we're in a new age now, and the old model is breaking apart. I mentioned that it's an age where you got to be a cheetah. If you're happy protecting being an elephant, you don't have a chance. You can't win this race. So the issues and everything is changing. But one of the key ingredients is this: when they say people, not machines, it's teams. But teams are messy. I love what Josh said, the human, not the soft, the human skills. And there's not a thing we do that doesn't interact with human beings. And I want to end with this video. Some of you may have seen it. I saw it years ago, and then Rudy in Boston right now for the Academy showed it recently in Academy, and I was like, oh my God, I remember seeing this and just forgot about it, and shared it recently, but started to have different kind of meaning. You know, we're partnered with the Navy right now. Josh said the Air Force doesn't have a contract, the Navy does. In fact, the Air Force offered us a contract. We turned it down. We turned it down because we wanted to get it right with the Navy first. But the reason it was important was this. I don't know if many of you know how we got to work with the Navy. It was a project internally that we called Project FU. It's exactly what it sounds like. Project FU, because we had so much hate and anger from employees and from investors, from board members saying, all this giving work you're doing, sharing culture and leadership academies and whatnot, it's a vanity project, right? That you need to stop doing it. You're spending way too many resources of the company. So we said, but this is the future. There's an entire business that we accidentally, I think, have. And we wrote this memo in 2015. As I mentioned, the CIA and the DOD is talking about modernization of the workforce and whatnot. If government's doing it, everyone will do it. And the board loved it. The investors loved it. They left us alone for 2 years. But by 2017, it got really ugly. And they wanted the whole thing shut down. They wanted me out as CEO. You know, Meghan was CEO with me then. I mean, board members are lunging across the table. It was very bad. And so we left and we said, you know what we're going to do? The number of people who come to us for help. We rounded 100 large companies. I mean, these are the biggest of companies. And we said, we're going to interview every one of them who wants more of our time, more of our help. And we're going to say no. We're going to reject 99 of them and pick one. And we're going to go all in to help them upgrade and change from an elephant to a cheetah first. And with that, we're going to pick a big one. So no one does it, oh, you're so small, it's so cute in a small tech company, but won't work in a big company. Well, the Navy has 5,000 locations and 640,000 people. So if you're bigger than that, fine, good statement. But otherwise, it works for our size, it works for that, and everything in between. And it was interesting how we ended up picking and why we picked actually and started honing in on the DOD. We have met, and I hope you believe this, almost every industry leader organization out there. We know more of their problems. We know the trending problems. We get the inside view. When you do something free for over a decade, you get a lot of shortcuts to see a lot of stuff. And if you add value, you see even more. And so what we saw was this: the military. The US military is so far ahead in people development, understanding how to take care of people. The Fortune 1000 is not even close. It is like watching professional athletes and then toddlers. The difference in programs and stuff, it's not even close. And somehow the military believes the industry does more. The industry knows how to spend money. They know how to build dazzle and gadgets and have cappuccino machines and have cute little names and stuff. But I am telling you, we had them all through our academy. And we said, there's such a long wait list for academy. No one comes twice, except when we first met the military, 2015, our whole team was like, something was weird. It's like they were family. They got what we were doing. And most people are like, oh, you work on character. You give critical feedback, and the military's like, so what word did you use? So what happened after this happened? Like, they were in the trenches. And so we saw that the Navy or the Air Force, those are the top two choices we picked from. They were the influencers who will influence everybody else. And yet the Navy or the Air Force is not our end game. It's the Fortune 1000. If you look at who's trying to fix the world's problems, it's nonprofits. It's guys like Mackie, guys like Mike who's here. Like, they're trying to make money in different ways, and they give it their all to do good. They have no money. They have no people. They have no technology. So we put our business hats on. Where is the cavalry? Where does all the world's money, technology, and people sit? They sit in the walls of Fortune 1000 companies. And we've spent a lot of time with them. And if they move the needle 1/8 of an inch, you would fix every problem in the world 20 times over. What it costs us to build children's programs, it is a fraction of the money we make. And yet they act like, well, we can't spend that much for ROI reasons. They question ROI on pennies, taking care of their people. They question ROI on pennies it would be for them to go and help others in need. It's ridiculous. So that's the group that is in our sights. But the pathway to them we saw was starting with the DoD. So we said no to everyone to start with the DoD. And why I love this video is this. How a movement starts is fascinating. It starts with one person who is awkward, gets made fun of, the lone nut. And we have taken a lot of criticism and still do, but trust me, now it's like nothing compared to what we did. But the talk is interesting. It talks about not the first mover, but the first follower. The first follower takes the known nut, the solo crazy, and makes them not crazy. And you'll see in the video from one person who's just awkward and nutty, right? Because this whole thing we're doing sounds crazy, right? Then someone comes along and you're like, maybe they're not crazy. Then a third person comes along, and I don't know if that third person is the Air Force or the Coast Guard or somebody else, but just watch what happens. And this is the movement, the timing-wise, it's happening right now.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
I think a few hours ago, Chue talked about the CLA, right? I don't know. I don't know if she mentioned, but within the first 30 days, it's important to act, do something. So if you schedule a CLA, I believe she said if you reach out, we'll give you automatic seats into the next academy. I think she said this, right? So we're talking to Meghan last night, and we'll go one further. So people who've had a CLA, doesn't count, but first CLA, if you actually schedule one, right, in the next 30 days, one of our strap members, so it's either Tom, Greg, Meghan, and I, or two of us will come. We'll pay on our own dime. We'll come help you run it. We'll be there to help. So we'll throw that for the first 5 people, or the first 5 organizations. Yeah, so it can't be like I'm running a CLA for 5 people. You got to have at least 50 people minimum. But run a CLA, and we'll come as long as you schedule it within the next 30 days. So you have to run it then, but just schedule it.